Right now, somewhere, a child is being handed a picture book. On the cover is a lion wearing a crown. Nobody explains why. Nobody has to. You already know the lion is the king before you can even read the word king. But here's the strange part. Lions don't live in jungles. Lions have never lived in jungles. And yet you never questioned it. Why? The real answer isn't about lions at all. It's about you. It's about what your brain does with power, with fear, and with the need to put a face on things too big to understand. The lion didn't crown itself. You did. Your ancestors did. And the story of how that happened stretches back further than kingship itself, further than crowns, further than the idea of a jungle as a place at all. Start with the animal. Real lions live on the open grasslands of Africa, in savannas, not dense rainforest. A jungle is thick, tangled, closed canopy forest. A lion would struggle to hunt there. Its whole body is built for open space, for sprinting across flat terrain, for seeing prey from a distance. So the title, King of the Jungle, is, biologically speaking, wrong. Completely wrong. And yet it has survived for centuries, repeated in cartoons, textbooks, and children's toys, almost never corrected. Why would a mistake this obvious last this long? Because it was never really about geography. It was about symbolism. And symbolism doesn't need to be accurate. It only needs to feel true. Here's where the story actually begins, and it begins far from Africa. In ancient Mesopotamia, more than 4,000 years ago, kings were already comparing themselves to lions. Carvings from Assyria show rulers hunting lions in staged, ceremonial battles. Not for food, but for image. The message was simple. If a man could dominate the most feared predator in the land, he could dominate anything. Lion imagery appears on royal seals, palace walls, and thrones. This wasn't decoration, it was propaganda thousands of years before that word existed. The Egyptians did something similar. The Sphinx fuses a human head with a lion's body. Human intelligence bolted onto raw predatory power. That combination, mind and muscle, control and chaos, became the ancient template for what a ruler was supposed to be. You weren't just looking at a statue, you were looking at an argument that said, real power looks like this. So even before science, before zoology, before anyone had mapped where lions actually lived, the lion had already been recruited into the language of human hierarchy. That's the key word, hierarchy. Because your brain is wired to notice hierarchy almost instantly, in humans and in animals alike. Primatologist Frans de Waal spent decades studying dominance behavior in chimpanzees, and one of his central findings was strikingly simple. Social animals do not need to be told who is in charge. They read it in seconds through posture, size, confidence, and the reactions of everyone else in the group. Humans do the exact same thing. You size someone up before they've said a single word. Lions visually are a walking checklist of dominant signals. The mane makes the head look larger, which research on predator perception has repeatedly linked to a stronger fear and respect response in both animals and humans. The roar can be heard for miles, a sound built to announce presence before the animal is even seen. The stillness, the golden eyes, the unhurried walk, none of it is subtle. Lions do not sneak. They arrive. Compare that to an actual apex predator like the crocodile, ecologically just as dominant, arguably more dangerous. Nobody puts a crown on a crocodile. Why? Because a crocodile doesn't perform power the way a human brain recognizes it. It hides, it waits, it looks passive right up until the moment it isn't. Humans don't read stealth as leadership. Humans read visibility, size, and voice as leadership. The lion simply happens to check every box your brain already uses to detect a leader. This is where things get uncomfortable because it means the king title was never really about the lion's biology. It was a mirror. Humans built early hierarchies the exact same way. Loud voices in a group tend to be perceived as more dominant, regardless of whether they carry the best ideas. Height correlates statistically with perceived leadership and even electoral success in modern political studies. Confidence, more than competence, shapes who a group chooses to follow. Sound familiar? The lion isn't king because it's the strongest animal in Africa, because it usually isn't. Female lions do the majority of the hunting. Males often eat only after the pride has already fed. The lion is king because it looks the part your species has been trained for tens of thousands of years to associate with authority. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar has spent his career studying how early human groups organized themselves socially, long before written law, before kings, before anything resembling a state. His research suggests that human hierarchy likely evolved not from strength alone, but from a mix of size, aggression display, and social alliance. In other words, from performance. Early human leaders weren't necessarily the strongest fighters in the group. They were often the ones who could best project the appearance of strength while maintaining social support around them. That's not a coincidence. That's a lion's entire strategy. And here's the twist that changes everything. Lion researcher George Schaller, whose long-term studies in the Serengeti became foundational to modern lion behavioral science, documented something most people never learn. Male lions are frequently pushed out of their pride by rival males, sometimes violently, sometimes permanently. Their reign is temporary, fragile, and constantly contested. Kingship, even among actual lions, is not stable. Its performance under threat defended again and again until eventually it isn't. Sound familiar again? Later research from biologist Craig Packer's decades-long Serengeti Lion Project confirmed just how brutal succession really is. Incoming males will sometimes kill cubs from the previous male's bloodline entirely, resetting the pride to father their own offspring. It's not a fairy tale. It's closer to a violent political coup, repeated across generations in the grass, without ceremony. So when a human culture calls the lion king, it isn't just admiring the animal, it's projecting an entire framework onto it, one built from human politics, human fear of losing power, and human obsession with visible dominance. The lion became a mascot for something ancient inside your own species. Something that existed long before Africa's savannas had a name, long before jungle entered any language at all. That's also likely how the mistake happened in the first place. When European explorers and later filmmakers popularized the phrase king of the jungle, many of them had encountered lions only through second-hand stories, colonial-era illustrations, and dense travel narratives that blurred savanna, forest, and wilderness into a single, exotic backdrop. Jungle simply sounded more dramatic, more untamed, more fitting for a king's domain than grassland. Accuracy lost to atmosphere. The story won because the story felt right. And your brain, even now, still prioritizes what feels right over what is technically correct. This is why the myth survives in 1,000 cartoons and picture books, decade after decade, almost never corrected, almost never questioned by the very children who grow up repeating it as adults. Which brings the question back to you. Because you still do this. Every single day. You still read confidence as competence. You still respond to loud, visible presence before you evaluate whether it's actually backed by substance. You still crown people, leaders, co-workers, even strangers online, based on posture and volume long before you check whether the crown is deserved. The lion didn't trick you. Your own ancient wiring did that on its own. The same wiring that once helped early humans size up threats and allies in a fraction of a second, now applied to boardrooms, elections, and social media feeds instead of open grassland. So the next time you see that image, a lion standing tall, mane catching the wind, eyes steady and unbothered, remember what you're actually looking at. Not biological fact, not even geography. You're looking at a mirror held up by your own species for tens of thousands of years, showing you exactly what your brain has always been trained to call powerful. The lion never asked for the crown. You've been handing it to the loudest, largest, most visible creature in the room since long before there were rooms at all.